This story that I got today is not really on my outlaw correspondent stuff. This is more on some out of the state MSOs. So I guess I'm just going to jump in there. We'll chop it up. We'll look at it and play with it and see what you guys think. So here we go. Marijuana multi-state operators continue to flee regulated state markets. Marijuana multi-state operators exited regulated cannabis markets through 2023, continuing a pattern fueled by increased capital costs, high taxes, and the slow pace of federal reform. New York-based The Cannabis Co., for example, recently exited Missouri and Utah after what CEO David Hart called a odorous year. Meanwhile, Florida-based TrueLeaf Cannabis Corp. Wound down its presence in Massachusetts. While some companies may have invested too heavily in expansion plans or tried to spread themselves too thin across fragmented markets with different regulations, the industry is also young and still federally illegal. Part of the issue is that it's still, to some extent, the Wild West. Matt Kearns, founder of cannabis finance research company Greenway Advisors in New York, said in an interview with MJ Biz Daily, "They're still learning as they go." New York-based CureLeaf Holdings has operations in 23 states in the first quarter of 2021. Today, CureLeaf operates in 17 of those states after exiting mature markets including California, Colorado, and Oregon, as well as less mature markets such as Arkansas, Vermont, Kentucky, where the company was invested in hemp. These changes are part of CureLeaf's plan to increase return on investment and divest from less lucrative areas. That's interesting. California less lucrative. While the company operates two fewer cultivation sites than it did in the beginning of 2021, it now employs 5,600 workers, about 800 more than it did 3 years ago. Revenue also increased during that time, although profitability remains elusive. CureLeaf's total revenue in 2023 was $1.3 billion, a 12.5% increase over 2021 when it posted a revenue of $1.2 billion. Mature markets with an unlimited number of available licenses are challenging to many MSOs. California, for example, is unlike other markets because consumers are more educated about cannabis and are accustomed to having plenty of choice from their illicit and regulated suppliers. In California, quote, "You really have to be on top of it, whether it's a product offering they provide, a cultural fit, or a price point," Avis Boblyan, CEO of California-based holdings company Sevia Enterprises, said. That's where a lot of the MSOs come up short. Less mature markets with an oversupply of cannabis are also challenging. I'm going to pause there to say I haven't really heard it articulated like that, of the difficulty of the California market for large corporations. And I want to say Avis is partially right there, that it is a combination of your product offering a cultural fit and a price point to a certain extent. I will go deeper on the cultural fit to say it matters about authenticity. Authenticity matters in California. People don't care whether or not Justin Bieber says to smoke this cannabis or not, in California anyway. They may care in Vancouver and Siri, where they just opened a store. Shout out to the Siri store that just opened in BC. But in California, it's a different situation, right? We grew up in the consumed in the cannabis culture with top grade cannabis all around us all the time. So for MSOs to come into this market, it becomes very difficult because you have to have that trifecta of cultural fit, price point, and product offerings. But when you go deeper into the cultural fit and say authenticity, that's where you see certain companies will strive above others. You see Cookies in a certain situation, right? Because Berner has that certain authenticity and cultural fit, and Cookies shows him doing R&D and these certain things. Whether or not he has the ability to do R&D on all Cookies products, of course not. But it's the fact that he's putting in that work and they're showing him do that work that people say, okay, that looks authentic to me. I want to spend money on that now. Other companies can't do that. And I'm not saying like there's not people who have culture and authenticity in other MSOs, but it would be hard for the CEO of Cureleaf or the owner of True Leaf or say an executive in those positions to say, hey, look at me doing R&D on this, look at this new strand. Does that hit right? Probably not, right? So now when you go into a California market and you try to use that muscle, it doesn't exactly work the same way. And that's the miss that a lot of these MSOs have. You have to have the right formulation. And if you don't, it's okay for somebody who does. But you can't, if you try to do that on your own, you will not succeed out here. This market is a jungle, it is vicious, and it is cutthroat. There's thousands of brands out here. Why should somebody purchase your brand on a shelf next to 1,999 others? It has to hit all of that trifecta and then even go deeper than that. But I'm getting off track, I digress. Less mature markets with an oversupply of cannabis are also challenging. For example, wholesale prices in Massachusetts have declined 25% over the past year because of oversupply and current average of $4,000 a pound. And it goes on to talk about that and cannabis retail operations in New York and other MSOs, and that as the dispensaries get running, that there's a lot of pressure on the MSOs to perform well in these new markets. And it basically goes on to talk about Cureleaf recently acquired Canadians Northern Green Supply, a cannabis producer focused on import-export market, which Cureleaf said will help it supply emerging European markets with a secure and consistent high-quality indoor. While it's too early to know for sure, Greenwave's Karen said it theoretically makes sense to invest in international opportunities, particularly since it's impossible to know if and when U.S. federal reform will occur. Kearns added that for the industry to be successful, new cannabis laws need to be enforced and non-compliant players should face consequences. For the industry to achieve its full potential, he said, we really have to have more proactive role on the part of law enforcement. Boom. See, they end on that. That's a huge disconnect. No, dummy. I'm going to say that, dummy. No, we don't need more proactive part on law enforcement in the cannabis community. Anyhow, I think I've articulated enough on this subject. I'm going to kick it back to my fellow correspondents. I'm sure you guys have something to add right here. This is Luke Scarmazzo coming to you on Wednesday, High at 9 News. Kicking it back to my fellow correspondents to go ahead and get some of your guys' input.
It's a funny story.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when they're missing the culture, and they're missing that side. I've said it since day one, man. This is different. It's not regular industry, and you need all three sides. You need business, you need wellness, and you need community, you need culture, and without all three, you're not going to succeed.
I think in general you're right, but I think that there is in the long run, post federal legalization, I think there is a place for MSOs, because look at beer, for example. Most people buy mass produced Anheuser-Busch or Miller Coors products, right? There is a massive market for that type of product, but it's very difficult for them to exist in a bunch of fractured different markets, and their business model is being exposed right now. It really feels like they're trying to hold on for that federal legalization when they can actually connect all their various interstate operations, right? Because you can't survive in places where people know about cannabis because there's too much supply, right? Or there's too many licenses. So their entire business model right now is predicated on going into states where they have extremely limited licenses and a very high barrier to entry, like high capital requirements. And focusing on monopoly, and even then they can't even survive in some of those states. So there's obviously very clear issues even with a monopoly. How are you going out of business? Or an effective monopoly where there's only 35 licenses issued in the whole state and it's like 5 companies that own all of them.
You know what, so I have the solution to all of this shit is for these MSOs with their blank checks and everything. Why don't you fund these struggling brands? You guys have the money to do it. They have access to the market. That's what it takes. You know, y'all have the business. They have the business acumen. They got the dollars. They have the connections with politics. You know, a good way to actually get people to shop at your Apple Store of weed to support.
They're starting to get there though. Like
been through it. Yeah, support
that's what,
the
like,
trappers that have been through it, that are struggling because that they can't pay their fucking bills and they're not good at running a legal business. You guys got that shit banned up and everybody fucking wins, but we don't.
It's happening for multiple reasons. In Arizona, I just went to a Curaleaf store maybe like a week and a half ago, and there's no weed that you buy that comes in a package that says Curaleaf on it. They've wised up to that fact. Even all of their own product that's vertically integrated is sold under different branding. So they're on the right track. Eventually, they're probably going to start financing or acquiring those other struggling brands and absorbing them into their product portfolio because people don't want to buy Curaleaf weed, but they'll buy XYZ brand if they don't realize that it's actually Curaleaf weed.
This is my thing, though, is I don't want to see these brands acquired. I don't want to see them gobbled up. I want to see collaborations. Curaleaf, do a collaboration on the ground with one of the brands in Arizona and make it favorable to the brand. I'm going to say something that's completely crazy in your boardroom. Make it favorable to the brand, but where you still make money in there, and you still make more money than you would if you put XYZ or Curaleaf side house brand or whatever else it is that you do. Go into New York or go into wherever it is where some of these other brands are and say, hey, look, let's link up with some of these social justice brands. Let's link up with some of these social equity brands that know the network, that have the people, that have the support, that have the following already there. You don't have to go build out and go try to flood the market with cheap greenhouse crap. You can collab with some of the local cultivators that are already there growing fire and make them grow more fire and make it more available and co-brand it and collab with them. How about that? I don't know.
And stop asking cops to fucking bust trappers.
Yeah, and stop asking cops to arrest people. How blatantly disrespectful can you be to the plant and to the community when you call for things like this? That is just madness to me.
Fair enough, you guys.
We can't all be friends. You know what I'm saying?
Oh boy.
There's a bunch of us that got the streets. They got the streets on lock. They got the community. They got the culture on lock. But you know what? They can't fuck with the price of doing business right now. And just like you said, Luke, these corporations that are snitching on the local players that have the voice of the people, like you're digging your own grave. Because once they go out of business, they're still going to be selling to your customers that refuse to go into your store, because not only are you big box boof, but you're also a snitch now.
Big box boof. I like that.
I like that.
Big box boof.
We need. Can we get stickers made of that?
Man.
Big box boof.
Yeah, keep dicking back being bull, drinking some boffy, and no to big box boof.
Big box boof.